Hey everybody, welcome back to the Silver Lyming. I'm super excited to have another fantastic guest with me today. We have Patrick Plum joining me, and he's actually a contact that I have been coming into acquaintance with through Facebook. Lo and behold, Facebook has such power and breadth to connect people far and wide. And again, he is somebody else that I was drawn to because on his profile, he very adamantly talks more about healing and how he's helped himself get better. And I, again, am drawn to that type of energy. So I thought, what a perfect person to have on the show. And I asked him if he would be willing to share his story with us. And it's quite an extensive one too, very similar to a lot of us in the Lyme world. So without further ado, Patrick, if you don't mind, if you could please just share with us a little bit more about who you are and your experience with Lyme and tick-borne illness, please.
Yeah, definitely. So I grew up in the Midwest in the United States. And in 2012, after a trip in southwestern Wisconsin at a cabin, I came back and I had what looked like a bruise on my lower left-hand, like chest area. Didn't think much of it. Didn't think I needed to see a doctor. It didn't hurt, nothing like that. It was just a rash that went away in, I don't know, 4 or 5 days. And then again, didn't think much of it. Probably 4 weeks later, I started coming down with what I thought were flu-like symptoms. So this is August. So August in the Midwest, not what we would look at as being flu season, I guess, if that's a thing. But yeah, so I let that go on for a couple of weeks, just having these drenching night sweats, feeling awful. I kind of likened it to a flu or a really bad hangover kind of thing. And then I went, you know what? Something's not right. This has to be an infection or something like that. By then it had progressed to my digestive system. And I'm noticing I'm not sleeping very well. And when I do sleep, I wake up and I'm not rested. So I go to a doctor and doctor says, you know what? I don't know what this is. Sounds like an infection though, especially if you've been dealing with it a couple of weeks. I'll give you some antibiotics. So went on a Z-Pak, which is a 5-day course of azithromycin. Totally knocked it out. Felt great. A week later, things started coming back. So I went back to the same doctor. I said, hey, listen, it helped. I just don't think you gave me a long enough course. So this time she went, well, I'll give you one more course of 5 days. This time it knocked it out for like 2 or 3 days, and then it all came back. Well, exhaustively, 33 doctors later, from GI specialists to chiropractors to neurologists to, starting to have some scary nervous system-like symptoms. Nobody really had any answers, a couple abnormalities in labs and stuff like that, until a physical therapist one day said, hey, there's this doctor that my coworker's wife saw. And I said, well, put me in touch with that person. So I talked to the wife, very similar thing. She told me how Lyme disease doesn't show up on tests. She told me also kind of a more important piece for me is that Lyme disease is not the only infection. It has a flawed test, but there are all these other things called co-infections. So anyway, so I went to see this doctor that just specialized in tick-borne disease. And I walked in and she said, yep, you have textbook Bartonella and babesiosis and probably mycoplasma and Ehrlichia and a couple other things. So anyway, she sent my blood to IGenics out in Palo Alto, California. So you probably like told your viewers the nuances of the test, but basically they culture and look for the bacteria instead of antibodies. So surprisingly enough, though, I didn't hit positive, but I did hit very high for babesiosis and Bartonella especially, and then a couple other ones just on the lower end of the spectrum. So this is 2 years in. So I've missed a lot of work. I was in my 5th year as a pilot for a major airline. Doctors had, I guess to back up a little bit, doctors had kind of been really quick to go, oh, you're stressed, or you have anxiety. And as soon as they started that, with being in the airline industry, you don't want mental health things on your record. Plus, I knew that this wasn't a mental health thing. I've been stressed a lot of times before, and life was going really well. So I kind of pushed that off, and I'd usually walk away from the doctor like that before it got too far progressed where they had, built a whole case file on me. And then I had to walk away from my job because now I had a mental health problem. So got the diagnosis. The doctor said, listen, I'm going to start you on these 5 antibiotics, but I want you to go up really quickly or really slowly. I want you to kind of build up, take one. A few days later, I want you to add another one in, half doses. And I experienced what the doctor described as, your symptoms can go a little bit worse. It's called a herxing reaction. Well, getting a little bit worse was to put it very mildly. So I went, you know what? Well, I treat this, I'm going to have to stop flying. So called my company, got the paperwork in for medical leave, told them my diagnosis, all that kind of stuff. But throughout the treatment, I'm just like, you know what, this is weird. Antibiotics, they would help a little bit and they take away some of my more scary symptoms. But I noticed at the end of it, I wouldn't feel better. I would feel just the same, kind of plateaued. So I would treat and feel awful, be bedbound, be housebound, not be able to really think clearly, not be able to do anything besides like maybe feed myself on a good day, like that kind of thing, cook my own meals. And then I went after a year and a half, okay, something's got to be going on that is keeping me in this state. And for the next 5 years, exhaustively, I went from doctor to doctor, but more so just like self-research. And in the process of doing that, I noticed most family members and friends were like, why are you still sick? Why aren't you just seeing this? Well, if it was real, doctors would believe in it. Obviously, that's a big controversy too, that a lot of doctors don't believe in the chronic Lyme complex. So doctor to doctor to doctor. And meanwhile, the doctor that diagnosed me, super supportive. Her sister had it, almost died. She went, why is nobody treating this? And she started to realize pretty quickly that doctors get certificate action or license action taken against them when they treat this. But she said, you know what? I don't care. I watched my sister almost die. I'm whatever. If they kick me out and take my medical license away, I just retire. She was in her late 60s anyway. So huge help. So throughout the time, she was very willing. She's like, I'll put you on antifungals if you want to try that. I'll put you on antiparasitics if you want to try that. So through a lot of self-research, I kind of started to shift my focus away from killing bugs, just like blasting them with herbs and antibiotics and antiparasitics and antifungals, to shifting my focus on what is stopping my immune system from taking care of this, or what is causing my body to drop the ball here. And I found a couple things. Number one, so I had my house checked for mold. It wasn't that. I had my body checked for heavy metals, two big catalysts to chronic illness. It wasn't that. I mean, there were elevations of both mildly, but both doctors said, if you were asymptomatic, I wouldn't even treat you for this. But we'll do chelation and we'll do some binders to maybe get rid of like a past mold exposure. But again, didn't really yield any results. Until I found out, I started seeing this biological dentist that said, if you've ever had a root canal or you've ever had an improperly extracted tooth, like wisdom teeth, it can cause this thing called a cavitation, a hole in your jaw that basically ties up your immune system. Most people would never know until it's the proverbial straw that breaks the camel's back, which for me was a tick bite and tick-borne infections. And my immune system just couldn't get on top of it. So went to him. Unfortunately, though, it didn't really show up as being very serious. So after a year and a half of going round and round and round with him, I just said, you know what? You see something, you don't think it's bad. I'm sick. I have no answers. What if we just did an elective surgery? I said, I'll sign whatever you want me to do. So he did that. He got in there. He said it's significantly worse than what showed up on the cone beam CT scan, which is a 360-degree CT scan. So he did the surgeries. I allowed myself 6 months to heal. And then I went back to my doctor and said, okay, I think I found out one of the big problems. Let's treat again. Well, by then, disulfiram was showing some big promise. But see, I was already starting to feel better. I was already starting to feel just a little bit better, which I would feel better, and then I'd relapse in the past. And I went, you know what? This was probably an answer. Wasn't the silver bullet like I was hoping for. But so I started treating with disulfiram. Pretty hardcore, awful drug. In the 6 months that I was healing, I did tons of research on it. I talked to people that had done it. I talked to doctors that had written protocols for people. I looked at studies. This was different than antibiotics and supplements. It's not just something you put in your mouth, you go about your day and forget about it. You know, I found out, okay, to avoid nerve damage, I have to do this, and to avoid copper toxicity, I have to do this. So I'm not one of those people that just puts a pill in their mouth and then just goes, okay, let's forget about this and who cares what the side effects are. So I had extremely good luck with that. But because it was so complex, I made a video on my Facebook page going, you know what, this isn't for everybody. You got to titrate up really slowly, and then you have to titrate down really slowly. And it causes a lot of mental health type issues if somebody's prone to that. And I tell people it was the worst 10 months of my life. But after I got off of it, I went, you know what? I have energy and I have like mental clarity. I don't have the hangover feeling that I had for 6, 7 years. So it was a win for me. But when people would ask me about it, they'd say, hey, do you recommend this? And I'd say, no. If this is like your second thing, I was like, I was at the end of my rope here. Let me back up a little bit though, because during this whole thing, family and friends kind of just didn't really understand, why aren't you going to see these doctors? And I went, you know what? I'm going to hit up this like Facebook world and not only see if I can connect with other people that are dealing with this and get suggestions from them, but maybe do a little bit of suggesting of my own if somebody's just been bitten or if somebody has mystery symptoms. And so I made a couple of videos on YouTube and Facebook, changed my name so that, you know, people on the internet that may have issues couldn't find me or figure out who I was easily, at least. And then one day, and I can remember it, I'm standing in the shower going, you know, I bet if I could plug somebody into my brain for just 15 minutes, they would see that this thing is a big deal. So I went and I wrote a script and I acted it out in front of my iPad. It's somebody that goes and sits down with a friend, and the friend goes, oh, you look well. You look like you're feeling pretty well. You're out. Obviously, you must be doing well. But then I kind of illustrated in my head verbally what I was feeling, what I was thinking, how I was wondering if I was going to have the strength to get home or drive, how I was going to pay my bills. Insurance just denied this. So it's like I went on, it was like an 8 or 9 minute video of that. And then I went, you know what? It's a little too whiny. I'm not going to post this, until a couple friends watched it and went, this is amazing. You need to post this. So I posted it to my Facebook and my YouTube, went to bed and woke up at 8 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning. And I checked my Facebook and I went, oh, 150 friend requests. That's really odd. And then I kind of was like wiping my eyes. And then I went, oh, there's 1,500 friend requests in 9 hours. And I found out that in those 9 hours, it had been shared all over the world. There were people in Europe and other countries that had shared it and were reaching out to me, which was great. I felt understood. I felt validated, something that I was very much missing. But it also put me in that kind of the other side of it, where now people are contacting me all the time, and all I'm talking about, all I'm thinking about, all I'm eating, living, and breathing is chronic illness. And that wasn't necessarily a good thing either. So fast forward to after that self-ran, I still had some issues, and some fairly severe issues. I didn't have the hangover anymore. Like, I felt better. My fatigue levels were better. Mental clarity was better. But you know what? Something is missing here. Something big is missing. Like, I'd try to go for a walk. My nervous system would go crazy. Driving was hit or miss. It's like driving, I would go, you know what? I'm not going to go very far. I'm going to avoid certain routes that I know are busy traffic. I'm going to just not be social, not be in environments that are loud with a lot of light or sound or noise, which is everywhere. So I went there, it has to be something else, because these are equally as bad to when I was, pre-diagnosis, when I was still working. Like, granted, I was miserable, but I was still working. I was still flying all over the world. And I was like, there has to be something that has happened during my recovery. And I the whole time I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get well. I don't care what it takes. I don't care how many people I have to see. I don't care how much research I have to do. I don't care how many times I have to change around my diet, what I have to eat, what I have to drink, what I have to avoid. And then I found somebody suggested brain retraining. And when that person had suggested it a few years earlier, it had been explained to me very poorly, which made me not research it. They kind of said, oh yeah, you think you're sick, but you're not really sick. And then I went, okay. Somebody else explained it to me. They're like, no, man, this is a physiological impairment of your brain. Much like, you wouldn't say somebody has a psychological problem if they've had a head injury or a stroke or something like that. But this, a limbic system impairment. So they started explaining it, and I went, you know what do I have to lose? So I went on and I started doing brain retraining. And on day 2 of brain retraining, I went, you know what? This is really starting to sound like something, might not be everything, but this is starting to sound like something that could be an issue for me. That my body in this like sickly state has been forced into a fight or flight protective mechanism. And that part of my brain is now overly sensitized. So I went for a walk and I'm thinking about it. And it's so funny because I went for a walk and it was like 85 degrees outside. I couldn't handle the heat. I had really bad exercise intolerance. And I started like kind of doing the exercises that they have in there. And then I went, you know what? This is working. This is crazy. So the next day I went on a drive, same thing. I was gone for an hour. I went, man, I'm 2 days into this. So then not only did I dive in headfirst to the brain retraining and do 6 months of that, I started kind of going, okay, the power of thought, the power of the brain, can that make somebody well? If somebody has been made sick, because I was sick, I was doing all these things that I thought were helping me, but it's causing, my brain to tell my nervous system to be overly sensitive, overly protected. So then I ran into Joe Dispenza's work, and I started watching interviews with him, and I could not get enough of it. I started doing his meditations. I started doing, some gratitude type stuff. 3 months later, I was able to go, you know what? I think I could fly airplanes again. So basically discovering brain retraining, Joe Dispenza, 6 to 8 months later, I went from barely being able to leave my house to putting my paperwork in with confidence that I could now move across the country and fly to wherever. Now, I'm not saying that it was easy, and I'm not saying that I still don't have thoughts like that. You're sick for almost 10 years. You go into a high stress environment again. Of course, you're going to have some understandable fears and stuff like that. But yeah, so last year, a little over a year ago, I went back to work as a pilot for a major airline, the same one that I left and took almost an 8-year medical leave from. I moved from the Midwest to the South. I got so burned out. I didn't realize how much the winters just drug me down, the being cold all the time. And I'm an avid motorcyclist. I love to jog outside. Can't do that for 6, 7, maybe 8 months out of the year, a lot of those activities. So moved south, been there for a while, back at work, asymptomatic. And now I kind of went, you know what? I talked about chronic illness for the better part of probably 6 or 7 years online. Now I'm going to talk about being well, which that's had its own kind of issues. There are a lot of people that came to me and started following my page while I was sick. And, a lot of them are like, hey, great. And I was there too. I would see people that got well. I'm like, what the heck? They have done 1/10 of what I've done. They still eat gluten and dairy and sugar, and they work like crazy. And I see them drinking every weekend. And it's like, I was eating this super clean organic diet and detoxing and juicing. And then, then I became the person. I was like, I got well. Wow. And sometimes it's surreal. I mean, I have to sometimes fight the urge to complain. I work with somebody and we're delayed. Like last night, we got in 3.5 hours late. So I'm like, okay, I'm tired, but I got to fly planes today. And I was on the other side of the world last week, and I'm doing what I love. So, and I feel well. The most important part, I'm healthy. So that's where I'm at. I know you probably had other questions. You sent me a list of questions, but is there anything particular you want me to talk about beyond that?
No, I mean, that's a really good synopsis of your experience. I appreciate you going into the details about things and explaining some stuff, because again, we are living in the Lyme world and we know so many things, but there are people who don't know like the nuances between tests and stuff like that. So it's good to revisit those things. And I'm so grateful that you've been able to figure out how to get well. Do you think, I know I'm very familiar with Joe Dispenza. I loved his work and stuff like that. I think I've read every book that he's written. I've listened to him. I'm planning to go see him in September. But I feel like, do you think that you could attribute your healing specifically to him, or that was one piece of it and all the other stuff helped you, or something else I want you to just maybe expand upon a little bit more is your spiritual health? Do you find that that had anything to do with your healing as well, please?
So I'm a teacher by nature. I love to teach people. I'm a black belt. I teach self-defense to people. I teach people how to ride motorcycles. I still keep my flight instructor licenses current, so I love to teach people how to fly. So by teaching, a lot of times you have to use analogies. You have to go, this is where this person's come from, and this is where this person's experience is, and this is where this person's passion is. I'm going to use, something and compare what I'm trying to teach this person and compare the two similarities. So I compare healing to, and keep in mind, I know nothing about construction, but building a house. So you build a house, you find a solid foundation, you dig a hole, you pour concrete, you wait for it to dry, you put the wood in the right order and build it, and then the roof with shingles and sheetrock and electrical. Now, if you do that, and here's the thing, you can do all of those things in the wrong order. You could build the house without digging the hole. You could pour the concrete on top of the roof. You'd have a house covered in concrete. You could wire the house before you even built it, and then you'd pound wood into wires and all sorts of nasty stuff. So seemingly you did all the correct steps. But in one part, you have a very brilliantly, very solid, well-built house. And another one, you have just a pile of garbage that nobody would want to live in. You have the same exact materials and maybe the same exact people, but it was done in the wrong order. So for me, another big thing that I did is I didn't realize how much I cared about what people thought. If you would have asked me, like, I'd said, no, whatever. But a lot of friends that I had in my life and a lot of family members that I had in my life, you really like find out when you're chronically ill who is legitimately going to be there when the bad stuff happens to you. And I had to walk. So obviously there was disappointment because, I'm housebound, friends aren't coming to visit, nobody's calling or texting or asking how I'm doing. Maybe some don't even believe me. But a lot of it was just taking people that I had in my life that I viewed as very important, and their opinions is very important, and kind of like walking away from that. Now, if you're a very emotionally strong person, which I thought I was, maybe you don't have to physically walk away from that. But I noticed kind of like in the middle of, and actually the brain retraining was happening after this, after one of the last doctors I saw was a naturopath. And she sat down and she's like, you just told me your life story in the last hour. And you spent 10 minutes talking about your illness and, what I just told you, the 33 doctors and the this and that. And you spent the remainder of the hour talking about how much you're hurt, how you've talked to your family about how you're hurt, how you've talked to your friends about this and this and this. And she goes, I'm not saying this is all of it, but I'm saying this is keeping your body in a defensive or a fight or flight like state. Now, here's the thing. I sat down with numerous people throughout the years. So I was like, hey, you know what? Listen, I realize you don't understand this, but this is what I need from you. And maybe it sounds selfish, but I was like, I have to heal. I have to be selfish right now to get my body in a place where it can fight these infections off. So some people were receptive, some people weren't. But when I walked away from those stressors, and again, it's not these people's fault. I would never say me good, these people bad, nothing like that. It's just these people were not good for my healing. These things were not good for my healing. So I stopped talking to a lot of people. Instead of having 90% of the people in my life that weren't supportive and 10% that were, I just kept the 10% of people in my life. So 100% of the people in my life were supportive, the people that I felt really understood and I felt grateful that they were in my life. It's not like the phone rang and I went, oh, great, this person who's going to like give me crap about this or that. And I noticed my body just naturally started to progress toward healing. Now, again, this was kind of all done at the same time. I was doing the Joe Dispenza stuff. I was taking a few Buhner herbs, which I'd done in the past. I'd taken all of them, even in that order. So again, now I had my body in a position where it wasn't in that chronic, I need to defend myself, fight or flight state. So I started getting fevers. I would wake up and I would check my temperature and go, man, I have 101-degree fever. Usually my body temperature was lower than 98. I started to get a sore throat, which I'd had chronic sore throats growing up. I started to expel tonsil stones. So I told my doctor about it, concerned. I'm like, what is the deal here? What's going on? And she's like, welcome to having a functioning immune system. Now your body's going in and doing all the stuff it couldn't do. So when I tell the story, I'm very careful, because if I tell the story and somebody hears about it, which inevitably I talk about a lot of my healing publicly, it gets shared like, look what Patrick said about us. It's nothing like that. It's just, what did I have to do to heal? What do you have to do to heal? You don't have to say like, oh, these people are toxic and these people are terrible, but you have to ask yourself, are these people, is what I'm eating, is what I'm watching on television, is what I'm thinking conducive to healing? And I see so many people wrapped up, and I have to be careful about how I say this too. I see so many people wrapped up in the, I know this is an insulting term, but the conspiracy theory world where, well, these people in the government are doing this, these people in politics are doing this, and these people are doing that. And my ex is a narcissist and he used to do this and this and this. And this is where Joe Dispenza's stuff comes in. And this is why I suggest him, because I'm like, go do his stuff. Don't even take my word for it. I'm just a layman. Go do his stuff. He talks about, okay, let's shoot that person to the moon. They're literally on the other side of the galaxy. And what do you have to complain about now? What do you have to do this? Because it is up to us. It was up to me. It wasn't up to family members or friends to understand. It was up to me to go, you know what, this is really bad. There's so many people that live in toxic environments. And I don't just mean physically toxic to drinking, polluted water with heavy metals in it or living in a moldy house. Like that stuff is obviously important too. But the thought type stuff is insidious. And the thought was what kept my body most of those years from healing. And like I said, I could play a victim and I could go back. I hate those people. If they would have just supported me, I would have healed faster. But there's a massive lesson in this on the other side of this for me. And that's number one. I don't care what people think. Who cares? If your health is at stake, but you seemingly have this perfect family dynamic, but you feel awful to the point where you can barely leave your house, that's not benefiting you. And that's not, you may be more popular in your family or friends group than I am. Like I said, I've gotten way past the point of caring what people think, because when I start caring about what people think, I start to go back to that place. Now I don't get full-blown tick-borne infection symptoms where I'm bedbound again, but I start not to feel well. Like I have run into family members and friends, and I have started to get that stuff back. Now, again, that's not their fault. They don't have some sort of force field. They're not throwing ticks on me, but it is up to me, my reaction. And that is where the thought process comes in. That's where the Joe Dispenza part comes in. Again, it's just a piece of the healing. There are a lot of people that would do that and maybe not notice anything. But one thing that I've noticed connecting with tens of thousands of people now, because over 8 years, and there's thousands of people that follow my YouTube, my Instagram I'm not as big on, but Facebook I am. I see one big pattern, because I've seen, you can always find overlap in people's healing, but I see one thing that hits positive 100% of the time. And that is somebody that says, I'm not going to get well because they don't, they never do. I'm not going to get, and here's the thing, their excuses are valid. There are a lot of people that say, well, I'm not going to get well because I don't have enough money. And yeah, I didn't have as much money as Justin Bieber. I did have money while I had insurance on my license that I took out before I got sick. I had long-term disability through my employer. I was very blessed to have that. It wasn't enough to do some of the things that I wanted to do. And I tell people ultimately, it was the things that really didn't cost any money. It was the thing, it was changing my thought process, my diet. Diet, you have to eat anyway. Obviously, organic food is more expensive, and it's expensive to juice and stuff like that. But it was the things that you can't quantify, and therefore, like the more difficult things. Like I have made lengthy videos and posts where I just sit and talk to my camera about, hey, your thoughts could be keeping you sick, and people will be like, "Oh, that's so great! I never thought of that." But I'm too far gone. I'll never get well. And I was like, I was sick for 10 years. Yeah, but you're younger than me. I'm like, I could always find somebody younger than me that was worse off than me. I could find people older than me that were better off than me. And that's the thing. If you take that attitude, you have lost the battle before you even started it. You're going to have a very difficult time getting well. I'm not going to say that you can't get well. I'm just saying, in my experience, that 100% of the people that say, you know what, I can't do it, there's no cure, I'm not getting well, they're still sick. It might be something else, but I'm just saying that is the one thing that I notice 100% of the time. I don't see people get well accidentally.
Understood that very loud and clear, especially morphing off more into being like a practitioner and helping people. Mm-hmm. I can hear it too. And it's sad because it's like, it's so clear, but they are still stuck in that space of saying like, I can't because or I won't because, or you're different because. And it's like, no, we are all the same. If we truly commit to ourselves to an outcome, we will get there. And you just have to really truly believe. I talk about that in some of my other posts too. It's just the true radical belief that you're going to get better. And you have to remove yourself sometimes from toxic situations, toxic environments, toxic people. And the other thing that I was thinking about as you're talking about that, and I understand that you have to be mindful, it's like you're not trying to hurt people's feelings, but when you're in this space of healing, like you're in a completely different space than a normal person. Like you've got to really batten down the hatches and pull tight to what has to happen for you to get yourself better. And maybe when you're healthy, like that environment would be okay. You can tolerate it and have a normal back and forth and up and down with relationship, like that happens with people, you know. But when you're sick, it's like that normal up and down and stuff that can't happen. And so you've got to really siphon yourself off away from that and just protect yourself as much as possible. And it is hard for some people to understand that, but you know, as a single person, sometimes I'm like, oh, that was a luxury because I was by myself and I could easily do that, right? Like I could close myself down or whatever. And I also didn't talk about it a lot because I kept being told it was stress like you. And how do you really talk to people about something that's not really there? So you just sort of be quiet about it. But, you know, it's really hard to heal in an environment where you're sick. And so I'm glad for you that you're able to get that insight and distance yourself and give yourself space to heal. And sometimes maybe that is really all you need to just shift, but it's hard for people. And doing that kind of work like you've done is not easy. And people don't necessarily want to do it. And it's easier sometimes to stay sick, as screwy as that sounds, but it's legitimate. Sometimes it's more comfortable or less scary to stay with where you are. So
I've told people it's not your fault that you're sick, but it is your responsibility to heal. It's not a doctor's. You could see the greatest doctor in the world or do the most expensive protocols and still be sick. And a lot of it, I don't think all of it, I really hated it when somebody would get well and they would come back and be like, well, all you have to do is eat a plant-based diet. I was like, dude, I did that for 2.5 years. Absolutely no symptom change. And actually for me, what was more helpful just personally was because my gut was really inflamed by anything that was like really fibrous. So for a while, not for very long, I ate more like a carnivore diet where, and here's the thing, I'm not saying that's a good diet long-term. I'm not even saying that's a healthy diet. I'm just saying for me, for what my body was telling me, that's another thing. I just started listening to my body and going, well, wait a second, I feel really good when I eat meat. And when I drink juice, because, you know, if the fiber has all been taken out, but I feel really terrible when I eat some raw foods or a salad, fermented foods. Histamine intolerance was a huge thing for me. And that got significantly better when I started doing brain retraining and stuff like that. That was my body's defense. And that was actually a very like shifting moment too when I was doing, so I did DNRS, which is Annie Hopper's program. It was a very shifting moment for me when she started talking about physiologically, this is what happens. Your body flushes and this happened. And I went, whoa, that is exactly what happens to me. And then I started tying it into, oh, this isn't being caused by infection anymore. This is being caused by my brain being in an overly protective state. So yeah, like I said, for me, it was balance. There's also, I had doctors say, you need to stop talking about this. And it wasn't talking about illness that was keeping me in that place. It was my thought process. And it wasn't my thought process all the time about being sick. There was that. But it was my thought process of, I have no support. People don't believe me. And once I took that strain away, again, that's what opened the doors to healing for me. Now, again, I was still doing things. I was still treating. But I noticed the moment that I felt, and one of the last doctors I saw told me about this. She said, you will know you're getting well or you are well when you forget to take supplements. You don't think about what you're eating. You don't think about really anything. You start missing that kind of stuff. And so toward the end, I was like, wow, I didn't take my afternoon supplements, or I forgot to take these herbs, or because I was out being social. And before I was just sitting around my house and I was like, okay, in 3 hours, I have to take another dose of this, take another dose of that. And another thing I did, well, I was sick. So I was single while I was sick and I lived alone. I had my entire house laid out to look like a sick person's house. People would come over, they'd be like, oh, there's supplements over there, there's herbs over there. This is the room where you do your frequency medicine, and this is the room where you do your detox baths, and there's your juicer over here. So I called it like my healing place, but it was also, after a while, just a reminder that, oh, this is my life now. Whereas before, my house was, here's a picture of the Grand Canyon that I took from 41,000 feet, and here's this, and here's that, and here's the time I went to Puerto Rico, and just cool stories. And now I didn't have cool stories anymore. And it kind of made me isolate too. And I see that a lot, because you feel misunderstood when you talk about things that's not exciting. Before, when I was a pilot, people would ask me, oh, tell me about going to this place, or tell me about your last trip, or tell me about a scary experience. And then I had chronic illness, and it's like, well, I don't want to hear about that. You went to the doctor and now you're on this supplement, or now you're trying this. Oh, okay. I found that I felt a lot less accepted. So I surrounded myself with people where I did feel accepted. And eventually I had to take those supplements and my juicer, and I had to put it in the cabinet when it wasn't in use, because I would walk by my counter and go, oh, this is my life now. Great. And by shifting my thought pattern, by doing I did those healing modalities. And I'm not telling people, oh, just think positively, because that's how a lot of people take it. Oh, I just am not thinking positively enough, which is how I took it. That's the reason why I bring it up. That's how I took it when people would say that. It's like, oh, your thoughts can make you well. No, it's way more complicated than that. But like you said, to nail down it's really easy. What am I eating? What supplements am I taking? What medications and herbs am I taking? Very easy to nail that down. You swallow the pill, you forget about it. But what am I thinking about? And I constantly notice, wow, I start going for a walk and my body heats up. And when my body heats up, that's when I get angry. And when I get angry, I start thinking about this person who said that. And I started thinking about that person who did that. And once I shifted I started what Joe Dispenza says, thinking about what I was thinking about. I went, wow, I have a lot of very negative thought patterns. And I have a lot of very fear-based beliefs. Like I'd go, you know what? I'm going to go to the grocery store. I'm going to start not feeling well. And lo and behold, guess what happened? I went to the grocery store. I started not feeling well. I'm going to be in rush hour traffic. My nervous system's going to start going crazy. That's going to be unpleasant. That's exactly what happened. Sorry, my battery's low. I'm going to plug this in.
Okay.
Yeah, so getting control over my thoughts. And this is probably implied, but when you're seeing practitioners and when you're dealing with things, going after people that are interested in root causes. If you're going to a doctor and they don't know, I don't want to name specific conditions because I've gotten in trouble for that before. A lot of people will cling to an identity of a diagnosis that doesn't even mean anything. It doesn't, like you go to a doctor and you describe your symptoms and they give you a long fancy word and people go, well, this is what I have. It's like, yeah, but your doctor didn't do anything. He just regurgitated your symptoms to you in what sounded like an educated way. So if a doctor is, number one, not going after the root cause, number two, doesn't specialize in what the root cause of your illness is, you're not going to move the needle. You're just going to be managing symptoms your entire life, which for me, that wasn't good enough. When people said, you know what, I can put you on these anti-inflammatories, or I can put you on these drugs that make you not think about things as much. I said, no, absolutely not. I'm not interested in that. Counseling, I think, is another important thing. But again, it's a balance. It's talking enough about it to be understood without obsessing and keeping yourself in that identity of I'm a sick person. I'm going to be a sick person forever. I have a chronic illness. I'll never get well. This person only got well because of this. Again, valid excuses. Every single person that's ever said that to me, I'm like, your excuses are absolutely valid. I totally agree with you. It would be easier if you had more money. It would be easier if the government believed in it. It would be easier if you had access to treatment and stuff like that. But then I remind them, hey, remember, there are celebrities that are sick. That take years and years and years to get better, and they have all this stuff. There are people that haven't gotten better. There's celebrities that have this. And I said, and what helped me is not necessarily the things that cost a lot of money. I didn't go to a clinic and spend $100,000 and walk out amazing, and then I'm walking around criticizing other people. I just said, hey, listen, I always said when I got well, not if I got well, when I got well, I would talk about it and try to motivate people. But that also means I only talk about it a certain amount. I don't go to my job and talk about chronic illness. I don't come home with my family and friends and talk about chronic illness. I live it in a very, very small area of my life. It doesn't occupy much of my headspace anymore either.
Which is good. And I think that's also another sign of true healing, right? Like when you're not having to stay in that space any longer, and it's like, no, I'm past that. I don't have to be there anymore. I don't have to keep thinking about that because I'm not living there anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
So that really helps that a lot too. But also I think by shifting your thoughts and giving yourself the space away from it helps you to heal partially as well. Which one comes first, the chicken or the egg kind of a thing there.
Another question that I got asked by one of the last people that helped me heal was, what do you believe will get you better? And what do you believe about your illness? And I always said, I believe I'll get well, but what's going on hasn't been discovered yet. So I thought maybe that was mold that needed to be detoxed from my body. I thought that was maybe parasites, because sometimes stuff like that would come out and I'd feel better. I thought maybe, you know what, there is an infection that hasn't been dealt with. But what I didn't realize is a lot of my negative thoughts and a lot of my beliefs, because like I said, even in that, even me going, I'm going to get better, but I'm not, because this hasn't been discovered or that's going to be discovered. And it took some people pointing out, you know, you have a lot of fear-based behaviors, and you're not going to do this because of this, or you're not going to do that because of that. And again, they were valid. They were absolutely valid, but they also weren't serving me. So once I stepped away from that, and once I started going, you know what, I'm going to put myself in a state of gratitude, and I'm going to talk about when I meet people. So I started to heal, and I started to be able to go in public again. I would go to a coffee shop and I would talk to people about what I was doing now. And when I say what I was doing now, it was what I wanted to be doing. I was like, yes, I'm a pilot. I didn't say I'm a pilot on medical leave. I haven't flown in 6 years because I'm sick. I said, I'm a pilot. And at that point, I had made the decision that I wasn't going to live in the Midwest anymore. I was going to live in the South. I was going to take a job transfer. So they're like, oh, are you flying? Yes, I live in the South right now. And here's the thing. Some people would go, oh, you're a compulsive liar. I'm like, no, I'm not a compulsive liar. I'm manifesting that because I'm telling my brain that this has already happened. And what's so funny is it started to happen. I started to go there and I started to be like, wait a second. I went to a coffee shop. I had coffee with caffeine. I had lunch. I just totally lost track of time. I wasn't going, you know what, I don't feel well. I need to get home. Usually I only have like 3 hours in the afternoon and then I need to take a nap, or I need to sit on my couch. Otherwise I'm not going to have enough energy to do laundry later. I just started forgetting about those things because I was talking about what I wanted to be doing like it had already happened. It was already happening, which sounds crazy to most people, but it was absolutely what kicked off my healing. Like I said, I started forgetting, oh, I didn't take my supplements today, and I don't think I took them yesterday either, but I still feel well. And then, like I said, then after just a few months of doing that, it was a very short recovery period from barely able to leave my house and do what I needed to do to submitting my paperwork saying, I've been asymptomatic for a few months. These doctors certify that. I certify that. Here's lab work that supports that. Again, my lab work started to get better too. Because a lot of people, when I say this, they're like, oh, well, your illness was just psychological. That's why you got help. And I said, no. You have to understand. My blood work changed as a result of that. My infection load went down. My organs weren't stressed anymore. It's like when you take your body out of that fight or flight, it opens up a lot of possibilities for detox and for healing. And for just, it's not storing energy because it thinks, hey, pretty soon I'm going to have to run away from a cheetah. It's going, you know what, we're relaxed and we can heal now and we can calm the nervous system and stuff like that. And again, like, that doesn't mean that I'm perfect. That doesn't mean that every day is a great day all the time and that I don't sometimes go back to those places. I'll get a headache every once in a while and go, oh man, this is how this started. And then I went, wait a second, I've been up for 23 hours. Of course I have a headache. Like, I need to sleep. I'll be able to sleep in a few hours. not a big deal. Like I'll wake up feeling great. So I still have to fight my way kind of back to that sometimes.
Well, and I think also that's like just par for the course of what has happened,
Mhm.
and like, of course, yeah, you're going to probably have those more inclinations, but I think hopefully as time goes by more so that will also relax for you too, that you won't have those thoughts that's like, oh, here it comes again, or, whatever. Like, no, but also I go through the same thing, and it's like, no, we also know how to deal with it a lot better too, right?
Mhm.
We've got the tools, we've been through it, we understand a lot better. So it's not as scary anymore. So that helps take some of that fear out of that too.
I agree.
Yeah. So awesome. Well, I really appreciate you sharing your story, like I said, because it resonates a lot with me. It's very similar to stuff that I've done. And as I'm going through these interviews, again, it's stuff that I hear that is very similar to people, right? We're really, truly radically committed to the outcome that we're going to get better. We wrestle with some snakes and demons inside, as uncomfortable and unpleasant, as horrible as they can be, and try to hopefully get them all out. And, you do the other stuff too, but the more I think about it, when I say the other stuff, like all the physical things, change the diet, do this, do dry brushing, and get on all the lymphatic drainage and saunas and whatever else that you're going to physically do to yourself. I do think they all help. But
Yeah,
ultimately, I think it is something that is not an expensive route, other than the emotional expense in a sense, but it's well worth it. And, you just have to really commit to yourself what's going to be the outcome, and don't get sucked into those negative Facebook groups that like, I feel bad for people and it breaks my heart, but I really chose consciously to stay out of those places because they are very dark and sad and heartbreaking and overwhelming and scary. And if you plug into that, then that's going to be your reality. If you plug into something different, is why I want the silver lining, so that people have a different outlet to plug into where they can hear people like you who have gotten better, who have said, this is what I've done. And maybe we don't all take the same exact chronological steps, but ultimately, again, there are such similar things that anchor us in that strong foundation to build a healing, a house of healing upon, that it's worth it. So thank you
yeah.
for doing that.
Yeah, and I have 6 years of material, even like glossary on my Facebook. This is where I talk about parasites. This is where I talk about mold. This is where I talk about Bartonella and Babesia. So, there is that stuff too. But when people ask me, see, a lot of people will private message me, and it's like I get asked the same 99% of questions, which is why anytime I do get a new question, I make a post about it. Hey, here's what I think about this, and then I let people comment, positive or negative comments underneath it, whatever. But I allow people to disagree with me. I've had plenty of people be like, I totally disagree with everything that you said here. Okay, let's have a discussion publicly, not privately. I was like, just because a lot of the other people might be thinking this exact same thing. So I was like, which is why I don't answer private messages anymore, because a private message takes away my time to answer one person's question. When I do a post with a group, it's hundreds, maybe thousands of people can see that might be thinking the exact same thing. So some people will be like, just give me a summary. I was like, give me a summary, like ask a brain surgeon, give me a summary of how you do brain surgery. I'm like, well, there's probably a reason why I had to have 8 years of training to do this job. If I don't, okay, I cut open the head, I slice some stuff out, I put the head back on. It's oversimplification. So if you ask me for a summary, I'm like, couple points. Number one, find out the root cause of your suffering, because a lot of people will go, well, I have babesiosis and I have Bartonella. That's most likely not the root cause of your suffering. Because for me, that was just what made me go, wait a second, why is my body like so almost like not wanting to fight? Like what has gone on? And I figured out the overstress of like, eating processed foods all the time and working and burn the candle at both ends, so to speak, still having a social life, going to visit all these friends that ironically I wouldn't see for 8 years because they didn't come to see me. So flying to the other side of the country to see them. On layovers, sometimes I'd be in the same city as somebody and they'd say, oh, hey, why don't you meet me at 6 a.m. for breakfast? I was like, gosh, that's like 3 hours of sleep. What if I can't nap later and then I have to do a 12-hour day on 3 hours of sleep? That's not a good idea, but I would do it this is the opportunity to see them. So find out the root cause of what has caused your immune system to drop the ball, or in the condition, or in the case of, autoimmune people, what has made your immune system this trigger happy, like kind of in this trigger happy kind of state. So I say, all right, so root cause, try to figure out why your immune system has dropped the ball. Keep your thoughts in line, because again, like I said, I've never seen anybody, I like to think it can happen. I just have never seen anybody get well that doesn't believe they're going to get well. That doesn't mean that you totally just deny that you're suffering with problems. It's, obviously that would be naive if somebody went to a doctor and they're like, I don't have a cancerous tumor right here. Like, yeah, you do. I can see it. We should probably do something about it. So yeah, root cause, figure out why your immune system has dropped the ball. Clean up every area of your life. The thought part, the reason why I talk about that is because that's the most insidious. And a lot of people don't even realize they're doing it. They're just talking about, look at all this crap going wrong in the world, and look at this, and look at gas prices, and look at this. And why do you not care about this, Patrick? I'm like, I care about being happy. This stuff is always going to be there. We're always going to have political problems. We're always going to have debt. We're always going to have issues with the economy. You're always going to have stress at work. Nobody ever feels like they have enough money. So I say, unplug yourself from that stuff and plug yourself into some positive thinking, and putting your body both nutritiously with supplements in a state where it can heal. So, I mean, that's like my 5-minute synopsis of when somebody, which I realize is generic advice, but if you talk to 10 different people, how they've healed, you're going to get 10 different answers, because all 10 of those people have different environments that they live in. They have different genetics. They have different things they've been exposed to. They live their lives in different ways. And that's the reason why you can never nail down, well, how did you beat Lyme disease? How did you beat all these infections? I'm like, here's what I did. I'll give you a 5-minute thing. But most people want more. Well, tell me what you took, or tell me how often you took it, or tell me what doctor you saw, or tell me. I'm like, honestly, it wasn't in the doctors that healed me as much as it was me self-researching, me realizing what personally was dropping the ball in my body, and then changing the environment around. And for me, like I said, it was a physiological thing. I didn't live in a moldy house. I wasn't drinking bad water. I wasn't being exposed to chemicals anymore. And I was, doing what I could to detox, but it wasn't until I took my body out of that protective type state that it started to heal. So hopefully, I feel like I when I talk.
No, that's very helpful. And it's hard to quantify for someone. Like, people ask me too, like, how'd you heal? And it's like, well, And the best analogy I have is, like, you make lots of little pebbles that turn into a wall that you can crawl out of. It's lots of little things that you do over time that are going to create the greatest shift in the end. But it's not one simple thing. If it was, I'd be a bazillionaire, right? Just do this. It's so easy.
I tell people, if there was one cure for chronic illness, I would buy it, patent it, and then sell it affordably. Not to make money, but to help people. But there isn't, which is why there's a lot of people that have stepped outside of Western medicine, and some of those people are great, and other people are selling you snake oil, and you have to differentiate between the two different people. It's funny to me when people criticize me. I'm like, dude, I'm not a doctor. I don't care about making money from you. I'm literally giving information away for free. I'm not selling supplements. I'm not endorsing a cure. I'm not patenting anything. I was like, you cannot criticize me for having ulterior motives.
Truly. This is just purely because we've been there in that space and we know what it's like, and you would want someone to not have to be in that space any longer than they have to be. And sometimes I think about it too, with the way that you heal is like, it is a very beautiful process, as much as it sucks. But like, I'm picturing different rocks that you hop to, right? And that some are going to be the right ones, some's going to be a trapdoor and you're going to fall through, and you got to crawl back up and figure your way out. But and nobody's path is exactly the same. But that's kind of the beautiful thing, is that everybody's soul is going to evolve differently through this experience. But in sharing what you know and what you've learned, again, hopefully maybe you can put almost have like connect the dots too, is like you can connect someone to a much more further along dot than them having to like go the really circuitous route to get there, and just shorten it or help them see it differently.
And that's why I talk about the things that have helped me too, and even the things that haven't helped me, because for every like 10 things that haven't helped me, I'll see comments below it like, oh, that got me out of a wheelchair. Okay, good. I'm glad I posted about this, even though it made no difference in my recovery. But and that's how I got well, is by asking other people. I would have never found out about the cavitations. I would have never found out about brain retraining or disulfiram or anything. And again, here's the thing. I'm not recommending all those things, especially the harsher prescription medications. I think that they have their spot. And people ask me what supplements I take. I'm like, that is a pointless answer. Like, yes, I take all the basic ones, the B vitamins, the D vitamins, or the, vitamin D. I take just like, some basic stuff that will help the immune system, like NAC and zinc and stuff like that. But people want to know, tell me exactly what you did, and that path will walk me to wellness. I said, no, you need to take the good stuff from what I tell you and take it. And then you need to take the stuff that, okay, you know what, that's not going to benefit me. But like I said, the place that I feel like everybody needs to start is the free one, but it's also the most difficult one. And it's like, think about what you've been thinking about. If you're thinking all day, yep, I'll never get well, it doesn't matter what you put in your body. Good luck.
Correct. Awesome. Well, the last question that I have for you, please, Patrick,
Sure.
is if you don't mind, could you please tell me what would be, in your opinion, the best thing that's happened to you as your experience with Lyme and tick-borne illness? Again, it is a really dark place, and I want people to understand that not all of it is terrible about what happens to us through this. And so what would be the best thing that's happened for you?
Here's the thing. I can talk about things that I've learned that may seem kind of dark. So I'll start with the dark stuff. I like to be a pessimist right away and then end as being an optimist. So to me, it showed me who my true friends were. And if you would have given me a list and you would have said, the most awful thing you're ever going to think is going to happen, you're going to get diagnosed with an illness, you're going to have to quit your job, you're going to lose your financial independence. Which family members and friends do you think will still be there when all this awful stuff happens? I would have made a list that was not accurate. I would have, and again, like, not bad people. It's not like I'm a good person. These people are bad. But just, it really surprised me. So it made me cherish the people that did stick around and that did ask questions and did try to understand. And it also helped me kind of sniff out okay, you know what? I'm never going to see this person again because I can't fly to see them because I was too sick to travel. So when I got well and I was able to travel and I enjoyed traveling again, those aren't the people that I want to see. And for me, they kind of look like probably, hey, what's your problem? And it's like, it's not that I have a problem. It's that now I value my time and my energy more. So I realize the important things in life. I don't work myself to death anymore. I still do some overtime every once in a while. I don't invest in relationships just because we have a history. I had so many friends that I'm like, well, we were friends since middle school, so I guess we're still friends. No, we don't have a lot in common anymore. Not a bad thing. Doesn't make me better than them or me worse than them. Same thing, family members. We have a blood relation. Doesn't matter. I wish those people well. Not a good enough reason to keep somebody in your life that is taking up the valuable time. We only have, and I'm not going to live very long because I was sick for 10 years. I really value my time. So when somebody private messages me and they're like, just talk to me on the phone, somebody that I've never met, I was like, we're going to have the same, I said, I've done this. We're going to have the same hour-and-a-half conversation. I will have brought myself back to that chronic illness state. So I'll leave it not feeling well. I'll feel drained. I've taken my time. I've given you something, which most of the time people don't take the suggestions that I give them, which is why I agree to podcasts. I do posts, and I agree to answer every question underneath a post that I make. I said, I will publicly answer your question. Absolutely. So that's the least I can do. But so I value my time. I value my energy. Energy is a real thing. It's so funny because a lot of people are like, well, I don't believe in energy because I believe in this. I'm like, really? You walk into a room with a bunch of depressed people and you don't feel depressed? You walk into a room with a bunch of like eccentric and excited people and you don't feel excited? Then come on, you have to tell me that you believe that the kinds of things you surround yourself with manifests your tomorrow, your future. So where you are today is going to determine your tomorrow. So I can't remember what your original question was. I feel like I went off on a tangent there. Oh, so yeah, the blessings that I've noticed. So again, a lot of people might hear that and they might go, oh, okay, he told off friends, he told off family, he doesn't value these people anymore, he doesn't value this, even though they have a history, doesn't talk to them anymore. It's not that at all. That is a very narrow-minded way to look at it. I just look at it that now I value friendships and how I spend my time and who I spend my time with way more. And I want to be around, and it's not necessarily around, I'm still around like very chronically sick people sometimes. But it's people that feed and nourish my soul instead of like, okay, well, I want to take an hour and a half of your time, and I know you're not going to follow anything that I say, but I feel like I need to give back because I went through it. And so I give back. The way I look at it is I give back on my page. I talk about how I recovered, and sometimes I do go back to that place of like, hey guys, this kept me really sick, so check this out if you haven't. But a lot of it is, hey, look at me. I'm in Spain. Look at me. I'm in Puerto Rico. And it's not to brag. It's just to go, I want you to see the potential of I was housebound. I was bedbound. I was diagnosed with all these things. Not only did I want you to see me sick and overcome them, I want you to see me well now. And I want you to see me continue to stay well. And sometimes I talk about the stuff I need to do to stay well. And that's not flying to the other side of the country for people that didn't come and visit me when I was housebound for 6 years. That's, to me, taking my time and going, you know what, my time and my energy is worth a lot to me, because that ultimately, how I spend that is what keeps me well. So like I said, just the way that I spend my time, the way that I value myself, the way that I value my time, I don't look at status or money as being a super important thing anymore. If somebody's impressed or unimpressed at what I'm doing, okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate that. But that doesn't, the whole self-identity thing, because I felt like that got yanked away from me. I don't buy into that stuff anymore. Like when people will say, I'm so proud of you that you got back to flying. I was like, okay, so you weren't proud of me when I was not flying? And it's kind of like a blank stare. Well, no, that's not what I'm saying. I was like, but that is what you're saying. So I said, thanks. I said, but this is the easy part. The getting to this place, the clawing my way back to wellness, that was the hardest thing I've ever done. So that's why I talk about it. It's getting well is not for the faint of heart. And like I said, you have to dive into the darkest parts of your life, your thoughts, your personality in order to come out the other side of this. Because most days I feel just as good, if not better, than before this happened. Now, most people can't say when they've been through 10 years of hell that they come out of it feeling better or just as good, at least, as when they went in. So yeah, I don't know. Like I said, it allows you to look at the important things in your life and kind of brush away the unimportant things. And even if it's just me watching a movie or just me meditating, to me, that is more valuable than going and spending time with somebody that didn't invest in me when I couldn't leave my house.
And that's very valid, in like giving yourself permission to just be and to exist and to be comfortable in your own space and your own skin, and not to have pressure to perform or do something for somebody else. Or I think that alone just can be very freeing. So what a beautiful gift that you've gotten out of a really warped
I hope
place to live for a while, like
yeah,
it's not all bad stuff, but
I have to be kind of careful the way that I word that and the way that I say that, because sometimes that comes off as you're blaming all these people for being bad or not being understanding and saying screw you. I was like, no, not at all, not the case. I said I value my time and my energy, and I really value those people that were there for me when I was not at my best. Because when you are chronically ill, you are probably projecting to the outside world the worst version of yourself. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It's just you are not in a place, like I was not in a place where I could give anything. I couldn't give people money. For a lot of the time, I couldn't give people hope. So that's what I'm trying to do now. I'm trying to give people like, hey, I was in the exact same spot you were in. There were some days I just wanted the suffering to end. And I said, you can get through this. So keep going, keep pursuing. And I tell people that one next thing you're thinking about trying or you just heard of, whether it's a dietary change or whether it's something I just said, that might be the thing that kicks off your healing. I did not think brain retraining or Joe Dispenza was going to do anything. I mean, obviously, like you have to invest yourself into it for it to do something. But I just went, well, you know what? I have nothing left to lose. So that's to the point where I got to where I went, wow, the nothing left to lose was where the healing was where I was open to the thinking about what I was thinking about, and basically becoming a different person in the process.
Yes. Yes. Becoming supernatural.
Yeah. Breaking the habit of being yourself. That was my favorite one, because to me, just in the name, it summarizes, I had to become a different person. And even people that have met me that knew me sick and haven't seen me for a while, they're like, you seem like a totally different person. I'm like, I am a totally different person.
Yes. I will often think about, like, I believe in past lives and things, but sometimes I'm like, maybe the past lives happened in this concurrent life, and like that was a past version of me that died and is no longer here when I was sick. I'm not that person anymore. I'm a completely different human. And I look in the mirror sometimes, I'm like, who are you? You know, like you're not who you were. And it does completely change you. And I'm glad that you were able to find a way to change for the better and to heal yourself, and that you're still here. You didn't check out. I know what that was like too. And
oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Like,
careful, admitting to having certain thoughts, because, like, again, it's really easy for people that don't acknowledge that this illness exists to just go, oh, well, you had these thoughts, so you must have this mental health problem. And it wasn't that at all. It was just like, there were a lot of days where I just went, I just want the suffering to end. How does that happen? And a lot of, so that's another thing that I tell people. I'm like, listen, I have been at the highest of highs in life, and I was at the lowest of lows when I was sick. And don't check out and think, you know what, I'll never get well, because I said that you just even having those thoughts in your mind, that is going to stack the deck against you big time. I feel like a broken record saying that, but I also feel like I could say it 1,000 times and most people don't hear it.
Yeah. And I'm also thinking about, though, that the sickness sometimes causes those thoughts, right? Like it's not you thinking it, it's the sickness kind of controlling your brain.
Absolutely.
It's hard to like get yourself separated enough from sickness and self to acknowledge that this is sickness talking, this is not me talking. And that was another thing that I kind of realized, like I had to divide that out better to see the sickness for what it was versus me for who I am.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, there are a lot of neurological manifestations with tick-borne infections. And that's another good thing, is to give yourself a break and just go, these thoughts that I'm having or the lashing out, this is part of it and this isn't me. And I'm going to get through this. Absolutely.
Correct. So yeah, that's awesome. I really appreciate your insight and help with this, because I think this is a really nice episode to give some people some good insight and food for thought, different things to maybe use as a mirror to reflect upon themselves, to help them with their own healing and dealing with some of the things that aren't necessarily talked about freely or readily, and sometimes not vulnerably. So I appreciate your willingness to be vulnerable as well.
Yeah. And that's another thing. I tell people, just be vulnerable and be honest. Like, most of all, be honest with yourself about how you feel. I've seen in this world, and when I originally got well a couple of years ago, I started doing the dating thing again. And I'm like, there are so many people that like are so self-deceived. Like I'm this way and I'm this way and I'm this way. And then you meet them and you're like, no, you're not. Who wrote this profile for you? So the other thing is, like I said, is getting control of your thoughts, being like, what kind of person am I? And what kind of person do I want to be?
Huge. And I, like, you can picture even stepping into that person, like put that suit on. Someone taught me to picture putting on a suit of what you want it to look like and feel like and be, and practice that feeling.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, Patrick. I really do appreciate you tremendously and what you represent and what you bring to the table and what you provide to our community and to others who aren't even in the Lyme community, just people struggling in general, to understand how they can possibly recalibrate themselves differently to get through it and to come back out on the other side.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me on.
Most definitely. I'm sure we'll talk soon. Thank you. All right. Bye.